So the Switch 2's been out for a little bit now, and there's been a lot of really cool mods to hit the scene so far. We got like vinyl skins, transparent housings, you know, holographic buttons by yours truly. But the one thing I hadn't seen solved yet is the stock ring color. Blue and orange are great, but they can be a little limiting when you're trying to plan out some color themes and, you know, do stuff. I've seen some really cool stuff posted on Reddit that kind of gets a little ruined by the blue or the orange. So I set out to solve that. And today I would like to show you JoyRings. They are a made in-house resin cast part that is set to replace your stock rings with something a little better, more neutral, more freeing and opening up to a bunch of different color schemes and that kind of thing. Now, the first 4 that are gonna be available at launch, if you're watching this video, they're live now, is matte black right here. We got frosted clear. These 2 will go with most themes, you know, they're pretty neutral. And then we're gonna have party purple, which is like an atomic purple, but with hollow flake in it, which also has a matching button set that you could buy. And we've got party pink, which I'll be throwing in today with a matching button set into a white extreme rate shell. So for the install, I will say that this is a advanced install. There is a chance you can get stick drift and break your stick. I'll just quickly show you why right now. So getting this piece off is very difficult if you've never done it before. It feels like you're gonna break it. It's kind of like a bayonet move, so you have to like press really hard, rotate, pull up while you still rotate, and like try to find the sweet spot. And then once you have this off, there's a really tiny spring that you can lose. So it feels forceful. This is the recommended way to remove this that I've seen online. So that's the way I've followed. But yeah, I just want to warn you about that. Don't break your stuff. I can't help you if you break your stuff. There are replacement assemblies, like the actual Joycon assembly, or sorry, the actual stick assembly itself. There are replacements already available. I've seen them on Amazon and on AliExpress. So I just want to start this by warning you, don't buy these if you are not comfortable doing that. I've had a couple of people with the buttons not watch the install video, and then once they get them, they watch the install video and they say, wow, I don't want to take apart my Joy-Con. So yeah, don't do that. JoyRings are advanced. So with that being said, I'm gonna splice in the teardown video from my buttons, and then I will film the Joy-Con aspect. I'll explain why these are a little different than the stock ones, and we'll go from there. How about that? At the end, I will have the party pink Joy-Cons, party pink JoyRings and buttons installed into a white into a white, oh, there's a sticker on there. Yeah, I'll have everything installed on the extreme rate thing. So we'll do a little show and tell at the end. How's that? Also, there's, just like every video, there is like the clickable links in the description, etc. If you want to fast forward through some stuff, if you've already seen the teardowns, know how to open the buttons, etc. I'll make that all easy for you. So anyway, thank you again, switchbuttons.com, and let's get started. Okay, how are JoyRings different than the stock rings? Let me find a good example. We're gonna look up for this one. Here is the stock ring next to a JoyRing. If you rotate them, you see these clips, they're gone on the JoyRings. No clip, clip. It's on both sides. This is due to the manufacturing process. It would be very difficult. The molds would be way more complicated, and there would be a lot more failure rate by including these clips. Now, the purpose of these little clips is to allow this ring itself to not wiggle around. It's kind of locked in with this whole assembly. So we're gonna lose a little bit of nicety during the install, but the end result, these clips don't matter. Now, one other difference between JoyRings and the stock rings are that the JoyRings sit a little looser, and that is on purpose because I found there was a couple of variances in terms of extreme rate and the stock shells like diameters. And this, I've noticed this even between like different kinds of extreme rate shells as well. So the JoyRings will sit a little looser versus the stock ring, but that also has some play to it as well. And that's just something I would like to note. You might see a little more edges on these ones. You can center them up, and once you have the stick installed, it's not really something you notice. But it's something I wanted to point out. I might tweak some things, tighten things up in the future, but for our first batch and these first round of molds until they expire, this is what we came up with. It's the best of both worlds in terms of fitment and performance. I'm always gonna choose performance and fitment first over like minute details like that. So I just thought you'd like to know that. That is, you know, we're being transparent. Anyway, let's dive into the actual install aspect of the rings. It's not too hard. You just have to pay attention. Let's start with the right one. Here we go, right Joy-Con. Now, what you're gonna see is a tri-wing here and a tri-wing here. We're gonna start there. Hopefully, I grabbed the right tri-wing from that first clip. Let's see. Looks like I did, awesome. So, Nintendo did some weird stuff with this. Their choice of screws is kind of interesting, and you're about to see why. So as you take those two screws out, you're gonna see that you're gonna wanna be able to pry it open. Sorry, hold on, focus, there we go. So grab your spudger and note that the frame will start to pry here and here. Your goal is to get the trim piece right here off. It's stuck on with adhesive. So what I like to do is grab the spudger, put it in between the parts of the shell right here, and just pop it up. So you see how that works like that? Now the rest you can do with your hand. This is just stuck on with adhesive. We're toying with the idea of selling replacement adhesive because sometimes stuff like this happens. Check that out, perfect timing. So anyway, it's just stuck on with some adhesive, nothing that crazy. And here's where Nintendo gets weird. Another tri-wing, and why did they just make this one, like either pick a tri-wing or pick a Phillips head, making me switch all these screwdriver heads, kind of annoying. So anyway, grab the first tri-wing, remove it, and then we'll switch to Phillips. Pah. There we go, Phillips out. And now the next step is super important, and this is so you don't break a clip. Trust me, I've broken 4 clips by now. So I'm gonna show you what the inside looks like, and then I will show you how to deal with it. Right around this area is a clip. I'll probably pause the video and show you. Now the other side of that is easier to show you. It lies right here. And how they're worked, it's like a tongue and groove. Sorry, I broke my wrist. I don't really have a lot of like dexterity to rotate. Picture this happening. That's the clip, so don't break it. Anyway, the goal here is to put your fingers here. You can start to see that the shell will separate. If you pull it just straight off, that's where you're gonna break a clip. So the way I've discovered is you can kind of see what I mean? It's stuck. So you kind of separate this a little bit, and then you want to take your hand, place it on the top here and slide that way while also prying up. So I'll show you, I'll try my best to show you from the top down view. Up, slide it down. Come on, little tricky. I'm using my thumb here. So up and down. Now, that worked well. I didn't break anything. Hey, so as I'm editing this, I'm realizing it's a little disjointed only because I explained the clip thing, and then I guess when I was filming this originally, I didn't really account for that. I don't know, whatever. Anyway, I was taking it apart in the next clip. I lost this plunger thing right here. It just sits in there and it fell out when I did something. So take note of that. It's not a big deal if you do, just find it. And the other thing is I'm just the next clip unplugging 2 ribbon cables. So that's all. As a bonus, check this out. These are the new hollows. They are installed. They color shift just like our Steam Deck ones. They're super popular on the deck, and I think they look sick. Anyway, back to the install. See ya. Let's move on. The next step is to remove this right trigger right here. Super easy. Take a spudger. You can use the flat part, you can use the pointy part, and you just want to put it in and pull up. Now, don't do this a little aggressively because there is a spring right about there that you're going to want to remove now. I throw it in my screw tray, and that's it. That's the hinge part. So your next step is we're going to be removing this battery frame, the plastic piece that holds all the battery stuff. It is super easy. It's just a bunch of screws. I'm going to freeze the video right here, and you can see the overlay of where all the screws are. These are all Phillips screws, so keep that in mind. Start right here. I start right here with this piece. It is the frame that holds that magnetic lever that fell on the floor in the beginning of this video. So here's where Nintendo gets a little weird. They do a whole bunch of screws and a whole bunch of different sizes, but as long as you follow this video, you'll be fine. The second screw is a black kind of like tall screw. And then you can just take this frame here and pull it out, and you will be good to go. Boom. Set it aside, keep it, I don't know, somewhere safe, and we'll continue. More screws now. We got this one here. Something to note, and that will keep track of the screws for you, is that this step, all of the screws are silver. All right, so your next step is another one where you might be losing parts if you're not careful. There's 2 springs in this trigger mechanism here, so you have to be careful to just don't yank them and let them fly everywhere. So I'll try to show you this easily. This whole frame is now free, minus a ribbon cable underneath, so also don't rip it out. You can go like this, rock it up, remove this piece entirely, and watch out for those 2 springs I told you about. Just don't lose them. Set everything aside, and now you can rock this forward like so. And that's your first ribbon cable. It's right here. I'll point at it with a spudger to make it a little easier, right here. And hey, while I'm here, I might as well flip this tab open real quick. So that's all you need to do to separate the 2 pieces here. Small ribbon cable, not that big of a deal. Set everything aside, and we will continue on. The next step I like to do is remove all the ribbon cables in this area. There's 3 of them, so I will show you that now on camera. Lift up the little doors, don't be too aggressive, and then use your tweezers to pull them out. So now that we have all the ribbon cables free, it's time to take this board off, and then hey, you're at the buttons already. See, not too bad. I'm going to freeze again to point out where all of the screws are for you. And that's great. Let's take them apart. All of the screws in this step are black. And there's only one sort of weird part about this, but it's not hard. It's just something to note, I would say. It's kind of like a timing thing. The screw in this part right here is tall, just so you know. Now, once you removed all of those screws, the timing part comes in. Also, this is a piece of adhesive right here. It does kind of get in the way, so you can just peel it up. I'm using my hands. That just frees it because this piece right here for the joystick stays in place. So anyway, the weird part that I was talking about isn't that weird, but this part and this part are together. And how you do this is you just peel this away, but it tucks, see this tab here? That tucks underneath the board. And once you do that, pry the board up and it's free. Okay, now that we have the buttons out and we are just left with the shell and the ring and stick assembly, it's time to do the weird bayonet mount thing that I showed you earlier. It's easier to do it when everything's installed in the shell versus the module itself is out of the controller. So that's usually what I would recommend. If this is your first time doing this, it will feel a lot more difficult. It kind of loosens up the more you do it. Don't do it too many times, but yeah, so it's gonna feel like you might break something. It's a little aggressive, but what you wanna do is push in on the stick and rotate counterclockwise. So I've tried to do this, holding it up to the top-down camera and like doing it. It's kind of difficult. I'll try one more time. So I may end up, yeah, all right. So I'm just gonna do this naturally and then I'll show you. I'm pushing in and rotating it to the left. It will kind of rotate once and stop. If you just keep rotating it and then pull up, you'll find the spot that it'll release. And then again, remember there's a spring. So this is at its current, like it is released spot. But there's that tiny spring in there, so you don't want to lose it. So be very careful. Keep rotating and just kind of lift up, and you will be rewarded with the smallest spring ever. That, please don't lose this. And then this half. So take the spring out, put it somewhere safe, and then you're just 2 more screws here and here, and the whole module will be removed. Where's the screwdriver? Here it is. Now, once we have that module removed, we're left with this. And you simply take a spudger, a flathead screwdriver, and unclip the ring itself. Actually, I don't even do that. I just use a nail. And there you go. They are separate. Now, once you have everything separated, it's really just working our way backwards. So I will take the shell itself that I'm going to be using, this one, and you look for the post next to on the flat edge of the, the post will always be on this flat edge. The rings are symmetrical, so they fit on both left and right. That's the same with the stock ones. And you just drop them in. They will have wiggle room again, like I said. And then you want to look for the small pins that are on the ring itself. There should be 2 diagonal from each other. And those align with 2 little holes on the stick assembly, I'm gonna call it. So you just want those 2 to fit together. Hold on, there you go. And that's what we'll be left with. So now you just grab the 2 screws and screw them in loosely at first. And what that will allow you to do is to get everything centered up on the front end. So what I like to do is keep everything kind of loose, like so, and then flip it over and kind of center the ring how I see fit, and then lock everything down. So let me do that real quick. Certain colors and designs may make the gaps a little more obvious, but once you have the stick on top, it's not really too noticeable. So that's what I'm left with. And then just grab that really, really tiny spring, throw it inside the post, like so, like so. And then we take our stick module. Note the dust cover, this like rubber piece here, that will sit underneath the ring. So you just put it back on and press down while rotating clockwise this time. You don't have to press too hard. That's only just when you're trying to get it off. So keep rotating it clockwise. You'll feel a little bit of resistance. If you go too far, it'll kind of just stop and like lock up. See this? It's not broken. You can just either keep rotating to the right and it'll pop back up a little bit. You can pull, but your goal is to make it feel normal. So use a little patience. Don't panic if you feel it stop and lock up. That's not the end of the world. Just keep rotating and have a little finesse, and then you're good to go. It won't come out. It's locked in there just like the stock one, and then you got a cool colored ring. So now I'm going to splice in the reassembly, and I'm gonna do this off camera just because it's quicker to do without having to explain each step. So I'll see you on the other side, and we'll do the big reveal. How about that? All right, so let's grab our buttons and get to town. This set I'm using right now, we're not sure on the name 100% yet. Thinking of calling it Super Switch, I think, Super Switch. The whole goal is to color match the accent colors. So, something to note about these buttons is the face on the back of them is always going to be pointing up in the shell. They're also labeled, so the A button here is labeled A on the back, just to make things easier. You can keep these on the membrane at first to use as a reference. It's just flipped, obviously. So that's what I'm gonna do. And I'm just gonna put them all in real quick. The plus sign button also has an arrow pointing up, so you know that the orientation is correct, pointing up. And grab your membranes for every button that's not ABXY. There we go, membranes are in. Now, we're gonna get to these. They are adhesive backed, so just peel and set them aside. I'm gonna put them in the box, the switch buttons box, real quick, because why not? So yeah, you just want to make sure your buttons are kind of centered. One thing I'd like to note here, and why I believe they have the adhesive, is all of the buttons, including the stock ones, have some wiggle room to them. I think I can demonstrate that a little bit. There's a little side-to-side play, and that's on purpose so that nothing scrapes against the shell. We tightened the tolerances a little bit more than Nintendo did, but it's still there, and it's a performance thing. So what you want to do, the only issue you could ever run into here with this adhesive thing is make sure that the legends are straight, because I've noticed with the Y specifically, that's the most noticeable, there's a tiny bit of wiggle room here. So you can have a Y that's like a little bit off, and that's just because you didn't align this straight with the adhesive back. It's not a very noticeable thing. Again, we made our tolerances a little better, I would say, than Nintendo did, but you just got to make sure when you're doing this step to make everything straight. Now everything checks out over here, so you're ready to move on. Now the hard part's done. Time to reassemble, and then we'll tear apart the next one. So you just want to grab the same board that you did and this piece, and remember I said they go together? This is the perfect time to do it ahead of time. So this piece and this piece, I'm holding this, here's your reference point. This piece and this piece, the board goes in between them, like that. That's the only weird part about this step, is you have to kind of rock it in, except flipped, because we're putting it in the shell. So that's the only thing, and make sure your ribbon cable here goes through the board itself. I like to let it sit and kind of tweezer it in like so. And then rock everything into place. It might take a couple tries. Got to make sure your membranes are all seated, etc. And once it feels like everything's good to go, put that little adhesive back and throw the screws back in. Reminder that all the screws on this step are small black screws, except for the tall one that goes right here, but they're all the same color. Don't forget the one that's hiding kind of near this ribbon cable. It's easy to forget that one because of the ribbon cable. And last screw here, and then we will move on. Now check your fitment. This is a good time to look at if everything looks good on that end. So far, I think it looks pretty good. So the next step is to plug in the ribbon cables. The opposite of what we did to take them apart. Grab your tweezers, make sure everything goes in correctly, make sure that all the little doors are closed, and just make sure everything's straight. It's very easy to kind of half plug them in, and you will have issues obviously if that's the case. So this part, you just want to be careful. Oh, and one other thing I forgot about is, I don't know if you've played Mario Kart most of you probably have. It says B on the motherboard, AKA the best. Where is it? See it? It says B. The best character. Anyway, the hardest ribbon cable to get back in is the joystick one. It's just at a weird angle. Now the next step is to grab your battery frame and that trigger that we set aside before. Make sure you have both springs in there. And I like to plug in the ribbon cable first, but in order to demonstrate how this works, I'm going to quickly show you this step first. This is the battery frame and the trigger. You just have to make sure the springs line up with the pegs, and then it'll sit in place, and it will fall off, but just make sure that those two line up. Now I'm going to quickly plug in the ribbon cable first to make things easier. All right, now that that is plugged in, it's upside down currently. I'm going to grab it, rotate it a little bit, and do that step I just mentioned where you line up the trigger. And then once that's lined up, you can seat the board or the battery frame onto the board. And then this thing's not going anywhere. Make sure it's clicking well. Hear that? Check it out. That's how you know it works. So we'll grab all of our screws and get to town. So this first screw I like to throw in at this step is this top one. It just kind of locks in. Make sure this assembly doesn't go anywhere, and then I move on from here, etc. Now that I have these 3 screws in, I'm going to grab this piece, this one, and drop it into place. The curved area here, see how that's curved? It goes towards the outer edge, so like so. Boom, boom. The curve goes around this orange part here. So then you grab one long black screw and put it in the deeper section. Like you won't be able to really see where it's going, but it's going right there. Screw that in, and then one silver screw on the other side here. Now, if you're like me and you dropped that piece initially, now might be a good time to grab that, so I'll be right back. The next step is grabbing this little spring and dropping it into place. I like to pinch it, get it on the frame, or get it on the hinge, and get it in there. Cool, see how that fits? So the next step, the spring fits into the slot right here. There you go. This one feels good. So now that you have that locked in, it's time to grab that piece that I dropped initially, the little lever that pushes this little peg out for the magnet thing. So drop that into place. It will look like that. I mean, it only goes in one way, so there you go. And now I like to take the back frame and this ribbon cable for the battery and plug them back in. So both ribbon cables go in at this step. Be careful, the ribbon cables are small. I've broken one in my life so far. So get those in, boom. Look at that. Wow, so exciting. And then kind of do the opposite. Remember, we want to get that clamp to meet with this part here. So I like to drop it in so that you get that little lever in place. As I say that, it falls out. Hold on. This part's a little weird timing wise, but you just drop it in like so. Get it like loosely in. See that? Not really together. So you want to get it so that it looks like this. This piece is completely unhinged. The bottom half is about like so, and you want to put your finger right around here, that's where that clamp is, and press down while sliding that way at the same time. So if you press down, see how it does this? Then you can slide it in and that clip is now engaged. If you break that clip, there will be some play here, and it's honestly not that big of a deal, but it will be a little creaky. Check it out, creak test, no creak. So that's it. That's how you know you did the clip correctly. And now we just have 4 screws, and this one's pretty much done. Same as last time, I'm gonna get the Phillips head screw in first because I don't want to switch cables or screw things back and forth. So I got that, and now we're switching over to tri-wing. One here, one on either side here, and then we are good to go. Make sure you pinch the halves together while tri-winging. And another thing to note is your controller is going to want to connect. You know, that's a good way to test that you plugged everything in correctly. Now the last step, let me seat this troublesome adhesive real quick. Cool. So the last step is pretty easy. You just have to put this trim piece back on. And again, if you mess it up, we're probably going to be selling replacements. I start at the bottom here and just kind of, it'll clip into place pretty easily. This step is super easy. And then that's it. You have 1 Joy-Con done. Congratulations. The next one's exactly the same, just mirrored. I'm gonna still do it for you, but if you're confident that you don't need that half, then you can do it yourself. But we're gonna move on. So we have 1 complete, pretty cool. And now on to the left Joy-Con, blue edition. I don't know why, I think it's because my very first Joy-Con I took apart was the blue one. I actually prefer to take this one apart. It really doesn't matter, they're both the same, but anyway, same deal. Tri-wing, and then we pull off the trim piece. I'm gonna attempt to go a little faster this time now that you're comfortable, but we'll see. I mean, I'm just recording this in real time, so I'll edit it down anyway. But screw here, grab your spudger, put it in this back part. You know, try to get it a little separated. Just a little bit. I try to hold it with my nail like that, and then get the pointy side and pop. And then you just peel up. You fight the adhesive. And sometimes it goes on the shell, sometimes it goes on this. If it goes on the shell, it actually gets in the way because it's in between the 2 layers. So good time to grab your tweezers and put them back. They do have little spots on here that it fits in. It's like in between 2 lines. So, I mean, it doesn't have to be perfect, it's just adhesive. And Nintendo really liked to put adhesive in a lot of this stuff this round. The Pro Controller 2 is pretty annoying. Remember, 1 more tri-wing and then we're switching over to Phillips. Now I'm gonna save you the spiel about the clip, but reminder, don't break your clip. Put a little, you know, pry up a little bit on this side here so that it's got some wiggle room. Place your finger here, like so. Lift up a little bit and push that way. Boom. You don't force it. If you force it, you might break it, so don't do that. This time, this thing didn't go flying, so that's cool. I didn't drop it, the trigger thing. So you can set it aside instead of putting it on the floor. Now, I'm gonna quickly unplug these and we're on to the next step. Set the back part aside, and reminder, we're prying this piece off next. Spudger in here, boom. Be careful of the spring, remove that. And now we're going back to screws. Here is the screws on this one. I'm pausing the video. All right, let's take them all out. A reminder, I like to start with this plastic frame here and get that out of the way first. Now, reminder, don't get cocky and just pull this off. There's a ribbon cable under here. So remove this so you don't lose springs, and then rock it back like so. Grab your spudger, pry open the door right here. I guess you can't really see it. And then you can remove the battery thing. Set it aside, and we're on to the next layer. While I have the spudger, I'm gonna quickly remove all of the other ribbon cables and also that sticker that kind of just gets in the way. All right, now here's where all the screws are that you're gonna have to remove for this step. Reminder that all the screws on this side are black. It's interesting, the board says B, again, best Mario Kart character. It says it up here now, and some dude autographed it. Look at that, XC, who's that? If you autographed this, let me know. Pretty cool. Quickly get all the screws out, and then we're at the buttons again. A reminder that the board itself rests, it like nestles in with this blue trim piece. So you can kind of pull it all up at once. You can also just pull it aside like that, that's fine. And then we're at the buttons again. Congrats. Now, one thing to note for these, I put a U and a D for up and down on the backs. And then for left and right, it's not like the orientation like the left button here. It's left when you're in the back. So technically that's the right button, but I have it on the left side because it's just an ease of use to install situation. So left and right, and then D for down, U for up, and all of the arrows will be in place. That's what it looks like. Up, down, left, right, face facing up. And same as the other side, the minus sign button, what do you call that? Has an arrow pointing up. And that's it. Membrane's back, and you're ready to reassemble already. So there you go. That's what it looks like. And let's quickly grab the board. So the next step, remember, these two pieces fit together, and you also have to get the joystick through this big hole right there. So joystick thing through first is kind of how I do it, and then I leave this side up and I just try to slide the board in as best as I can. And then boom, time to put some screws in so that everything stays flush. Now the next step is ribbon cables. Reminder, be gentle, these ribbon cables are fragile. Now grab your battery board, this thing, the trigger, and drop the ribbon cable in first before you do anything else. Plug in the battery board like so, and then we're sliding the springs onto the little posts, and then you just kind of set it in there. Put some pressure on there just so it doesn't go flying, and grab one of the silver screws and drop it in right here. Aha. Now grab the remaining silver screws and put them back where you originally had them, and you'll be good to go on this step almost. Plastic frame. Reminder, the curved part here goes along the curved trim piece. So that's how you know where it goes. See that? Look at that. Tall screw goes in here, tall black screw, and then the other screw is silver. Now we're grabbing our hinged spring situation, dropping it in place, squeeze it a little bit to get it on the hinge, make sure the little legs fit in that groove. There you go, see that? And then we just drop the trigger assembly on and it'll snap into place. Cool. Test everything, make sure it feels good. And then grab your back piece and plug in both ribbon cables. Now it's time for the lever. Set it into place. It only goes in one way. Test it out, make sure it works. And then, reminder, the clip thing. So I'll get it into place first and then I'll show you kind of how we want it to be. It's like this, offset, offset, put pressure here in the middle where the clip is, right in the middle, and then slide it that way. If you did it right, it'll sort of hold itself together and there won't be any creaking, and then you're ready to just throw the last screws on the trim piece and you're good to go. The last screws are 1 Phillips and 3 tri-wings. Trim piece on and we are all set. Boom, check that out. And here we have the final result. A fully cohesive look. We got the party pink and the rings installed. Here's what it looks like, all said and done. Not too bad, not too shabby. Look at that. Check it out. Anyway, that's JoyRings. Hope you enjoyed watching this. I know it was probably a long install video, but it's important, so I figured I would keep it detailed just like the last one. And that's pretty much it. If you're still sticking around, thank you for making it to the end of the video. Hit us up on Discord and hang out. It's links in the description. Switchbuttons.com for all this cool stuff. Thanks for keeping me busy. And yeah, more colors coming soon. All right. See ya.